everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. I am Jordan Hall, and as always, I am joined by the wonderful Taryn Hatcher. Taryn, the Flyers are finally hitting the road, their first road trip of the season. They completed their homestand, a season-opening 4-game homestand. They went 2-1-1. So we figured we'd look at the homestand, give it a grade, and then we're going to look ahead to this road trip. What we want to see different, what we want to see stay the same. So Taryn, let's get right into it. If you had to grade that homestand, what grade would you give it and why?
I would grade myself an F because I keep on saying to people that they're 2-2-1 because I'm consistently confused how there's teams playing like 7 games right now and the Flyers haven't even played us. Like there's teams. I would give it like a B. Like just a midsection B from the 84 to 87 range kind of a vibe. Because honestly, if I look at the last game against the Panthers, you hate the sloppiness. Scott and I hated the chaos of that game. Like we were watching the game and it was so chaotic, it's borderline boring. Like there's no flow to the hockey game. There were penalties, but there wasn't that like physicality of the Kraken game. Even like it was not a boring game, but it was a game that was like, we go downstairs to do intermission and we're kind of like, why are we talking about this? But that being said, the PK was really good. So you knock them for 7 penalties because that's sloppy and gross, but the PK is really good. And then you have to give some points back for that. I like I like how Claude Giroux has looked. Like there's certain individual performances that I go, well, that's an A and that's an A and that's an A and that's an A. So I can't give them lower than a B because certain guys have had A to A+ starts this season.
Sure.
And I think when I look at the games like this, the Kraken game, the Bruins games, I would both give A's. And the Panthers game, I would give like a C+ to. Maybe not. They didn't win. So I guess can you give a passing grade to a game you don't win? And then the first game, the game against the Canucks was like a very mid-range performance to me. I think if Carter gets those 2 goals back that he'd like back, the team has a different result in that game, but I don't think they played super well either. So I'm right around that B range because there's enough good to say this is not just an average hockey team. I think they've shown flashes of being a good hockey team, and Florida is a very good hockey team. And I think that's something that people have to put in perspective when we talk about that game. The Flyers played down a man for an exorbitant amount of minutes in that game because of the amount of penalties they had, and they still kind of kept in it against Florida.
For the people listening, we did not talk about this beforehand. I'm giving them a B too. I just thought it was a fine homestand. I thought if you told me that Rasmus Ristolainen would miss 2 games, that Ryan Ellis would miss the biggest game of the homestand, that they would get at least a point in 3 of the 4 games, like I would have taken that if I was a Flyers fan. So 2-1-1, and you missed one of your best defensemen against an unbeaten team. I think that's a B. I think so far so good. They're scoring goals at a really good clip. I don't think people are really worried about them scoring goals. Their goaltending's been solid. They've been okay on the back end. So far so good, Taryn. I think it was a B homestand. I think the road trip gets really tough, and so that's where I would have them at.
And to your point that you just made, and we didn't really talk about this. The thing with Ryan Ellis as well is it's not just Ryan Ellis can't play. And it impacts his line, which the Flyers enjoyed that kind of, I think, that kind of solid deep pairing situation back in 2019, 2020, once AV really knew the team well. Ryan Ellis dropping out puts Braun up with Provy, which is a whole different look for that Braun-Provy pairing. Ristolainen and Sanheim are still getting comfortable together. And I think you could find fault in both of their games at this point. But I think that's going to be a work in progress that if that experiment goes well, could go really, really well. And then you're talking about Sealer with Yandel versus I like Braun and Yandel together. I like the way that line looks together. I like Ellis and Provorov together. I like what they can do. You're not just missing Ryan Ellis when you miss Ryan Ellis. You miss Ryan Ellis on the top D pairing and on the third pair. But I will say I was impressed that I'm impressed at Yandel still maintaining offensive production regardless of who's next to him, because you can kind of depend on Braun to be more of the defensive part of the defensive pair and Yandel provide offense in certain situations. I don't know that a lot of us thought, we would expect to see this much Sealer, or we knew what to expect from Sealer at this point in the season. But it seems like when he's out there, it hasn't affected Keith Yandel's game too much. Although, that being said, Yandel did make a few defensive mistakes himself, but who among us hasn't, right? We all do it. So
that's true. Taryn, I want to ask you this. If they beat the Panthers and they were a shorthanded goal against away from being in a really good position to do so, if they beat the Panthers, do they sneak into the A- range for you on that homestand?
I think they sneak into like a higher B range, because if they beat the Panthers and it was still that kind of a game, you just can't be happy with that kind of, you can't be happy with 7 penalties. I don't care. Carter gets an A in that game for me. And I know people look at it and one goal was an empty net goal, so you take it away immediately, but you look at, what was it, 4-2 loss, and you're like, well, how did your goaltender have an A+ game with that? And you're like, all right, well, one's an empty net. And I'm sure he would like his goals against average to get well below 3 this season because of where it was at last season. But he was making those wild saves and the saves he needed to make. And doing the 2 of them in a single game has kind of been his issue last season. And so aspects of that game would get an A. Carter would get an A. The Flyers' resiliency would get an A, but the game still wouldn't get an A for me, because it's just sloppy. It's sloppy. And to be realistic, it's very early in the season. This is a different conversation with a different amount of emphasis later in the year. But if Florida's really as good as Florida's played, you have to be able to play better than that against those types of teams. If you really want to be a playoff team, and I think the Flyers want to be back to where they were when they were considered like a really threatening Eastern Conference team. And part of me kind of believes in it, because, even though it's early, why not believe in it? But to really make that be a reality, you have to get better against the Panthers. You have to play the way you played against the Bruins. If they play the way they play against the Bruins against other good teams, they'll have everyone believing and hopping on the wagon. But I still don't think if they played as sloppy as they played, Jordan, a win in that game, I guess 6 out of 8 points, 6 out of 8 points, if you do the percentage, would not be an A to me.
Yeah. No, I think
8 out of 8 points, 7 out of 8 points. That's an A. So that's where I'm at. How about you? What would be your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I would be with you there. Maybe B+, maybe A-, but the penalties frustrated me because, that was a game where you're missing one of your best players and you hurt yourselves. If the Panthers were just flat out better, I'd be like, okay, that's fine. But the Flyers really hurt themselves. Give them credit. The penalty kill did great. I think it was 6 for 7. But still, you put yourself shorthanded so many times. You put yourself in tough situations. Even if the penalty kill doesn't give up goals, it doesn't mean it's not affecting the game. So
they also put and for those of you who watch on YouTube who just saw me, cat hair got in my mouth. Please don't mind me. It's very much a Tuesday today. The other thing that I thought I would have, if we had more time on post game, I would have loved to look at an ice time breakdown, but sometimes we just don't have enough time in the show. Because that's the other underrated part of all of this, right? Is you look at how well Derek Brassard is playing, and Derek Brassard's time is significantly cut in a game where you have your PKers out there every 3 minutes killing off penalties. You disrupt the flow that's developing between all of the lines. That top line didn't do much night 1, and yes, they've done very well since. But I would have liked to see, that top line out there of TK, Coots, and G still humming on all cylinders. I want to see that second line buzzing the way that they were buzzing. I want to see the third line do more. I want to see JVR. I mean, JVR sneaky had a very, very solid start to the season, but I want to see Oscar Lindblom in a rhythm again with JVR. That line could be so threatening if it's up and running. And you take away from all of that when you have all those penalties as well. That's the other part that gets lost in all of this. Not only are you kind of screwing over your PKers who are now dead legged, you're also all of your guys who are not playing on that PK and are just sitting on the bench are getting ice cold and frustrated because they're not playing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just don't think you can't get a great grade when you play a crappy game. You can get it, there's the win is the win. You take the points regardless, but we're not talking about the real life schedule. We're talking about our own virtual reality here.
Exactly. And the reality is for the Flyers, they now have the Oilers who are 5-0-0. The Panthers are now 6-0-0. So the combined records of those two teams, 11-0-0 for the Flyers, these two games here. No, they're certainly not lacking challenges early in the season. And I think that's a good thing for the Flyers. Give yourself measuring sticks. See where you're at with this new look team. The road trip will certainly be telling. They opened the road trip on Wednesday in Edmonton against the Oilers, 10 o'clock Eastern time on TNT. The final two games, the Canucks on Thursday, the Flames on Saturday. Those are on NBC Sports Philadelphia. Plus, you can check out Taryn Hatcher on pregame live, postgame live, all that fun stuff. But Taryn, let's get into that road trip. One thing you would really like to stay the same as they hit the road.
I just before I know I always just drive everything right off the rails, but I do want to point out, because it makes me laugh, before all of these games against like the Bruins and against the Panthers and against, Edmonton or whatever, I always will ask about, like, in what way do you think this game can be a measuring stick for where you're at and where you hope to be in the early portion of the season? And before the game, it's too early for measuring, for like trying to figure out, what our litmus test should be and yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. After that Bruins win, after that 6-3 win over the Bruins, everyone and their mother, oh yes, it's a great measuring stick game for us. And, and I was just like, you guys, I remember everything. I store it all in this little noggin of mine. So
I will say, I will give Alain Vigneault credit. He has actually come out and will continually say, I think this is a good test for us. This team's one of the best. Yeah. I appreciate that. He's not like giving the whole boring coach speak of like, yeah, no, we're focused on us. Like, no, like he realizes the Panthers.
I appreciate AV. Like, sometimes I wonder though, and I know we've talked about this in the writer's room, but we were talking about the other day. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, does Chuck know he's about to say what he's about to say?
Yeah.
Does Chuck care? Like,
I think it's kind of like you have to trust him. Like,
well, and Chuck is such a like easygoing, great guy to work with. So I imagine he knows who he hired, and there's an amount of trust and whatever there. But it does make me laugh sometimes. So like, oh, that was very candid from a coach.
Yeah.
So sorry, what was your initial question through all of this? What do I want to see stay the same on the road trip?
Yes.
I want to see them continue to score like that 5 to 6 goal range. You're going to have to, I have a feeling Edmonton's going to be a shootout, because that feels like all of their games are shootouts. I would like to see Ryan Ellis back in the lineup. I would like to see the established D pairs together. I want to see Carter, the way he played against the Panthers, the way he played against the Kraken, in Edmonton, because I vividly remember the last time we were in Edmonton and it was hard to watch. Carter played he really struggled in front of, I think, like all of his family was there to watch him play. And the TV cameras, not ours, but like even the arena cameras kept on cueing to his family and his billet family and all these people who were there. And it was just like brutal. So I want to see Carter play the way he's played, because I think if he does, he has the potential to get some redemption, because I think Connor McDavid's going to do McDavid things. We know what the multiple offensive weapons they have and what they can do are, but I just think they have a better shot with a Provorov Ellis pairing And with the goal scorers that they have and the way their forwards are playing defensively right now, to be better than the last time Carter was in Edmonton. So I want the goaltending to stay the same that it has been. What else do I want? I don't know, Jordan.
Gritty? You want to see Gritty on the road trip?
No, I don't.
Copy that.
No. Nothing against Gritty, but if I'm not traveling and Gritty's traveling,
that's fair.
Yeah, that's all I got, Jordan. That's really all I got. What do you want to see carry over? What do you think needs to stay consistent?
Well, I'm interested, Taryn. You talked about that Edmonton game could be a shootout, and gosh, it really can. Both teams are scoring goals. Edmonton obviously has two of the best players in the league, the best player on the planet. But the Flyers are scoring 4.5.
Whoa!
Connor McDavid is not the best player on the planet.
Well, not that he's not the best, but I think it's kind of what you consider the best. Do I think he's like the best goal scorer and the best skater on the planet? Yeah. But I think if you look at I look at what the workload that like a Nathan McKinnon will carry, and you hear about his input and his effort and his skill level. I watch Ovi play still, and he's entirely gray. There's just certain. You said that so matter-of-factly, and part of me was like...
It's a fact. It's a fact, Taryn. I really like Nathan McKinnon.
Like this year? Like, you mean like this, like currently right now, you think he's the best player on the planet?
Yeah, I think right now, and going off of last season and basically just track records overall, I don't think there's anyone...
I think if you look at track records overall, you have to have a conversation about Alexander Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby and the up and coming of Nathan McKinnon. I think there's a lot you could talk about there.
Yeah, no, I'll give the history department to like Sidney Crosby and Ovechkin, but yeah, right now, like over the past year, 2 years, Connor. All right, so one of the best players on the planet.
I mean, best, and goal scoring and player overall are also two different things.
Yeah, he's just the best playmaker, goal scorer, like just the whole package. And I think he's a better 200-foot player than people give him credit for. I know some people think he's just nothing but flash, but I don't think he is.
Yeah, I can see that.
Connor McDavid is going to have an 8-point night now because of you. He's going to hear this.
No, he's not. He's not going to listen to this. Let's not toot our own horns.
Connor McDavid is now motivated, folks.
And B, I'm not saying he's not like the most talented, pure goal scorer. That I do believe that is true currently right now.
No, I like Nathan McDavid.
Best player is like a nuanced conversation that includes many things, and you can make quite a few arguments about a number of people. I mean, because you're now just eliminating defensemen unless they're goal scoring defensemen from the conversation altogether as well.
Yeah, no, defensemen are not in this conversation. No.
Oh, so a defenseman can't be the best player in the league. Have you ever heard the old trope, offense sells tickets and defense wins championships?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, then maybe we should value defensive players a little bit more.
Well, that's actually where I was going. Do you want to see the Flyers be scoring 4.5 goals a game on this road trip? Or would you like to maybe see some lower scoring games if it means lower scoring for the opposition?
I don't know if you can see it. You can't see that.
Right, there we go.
There's a fully gray man who's just one goal behind Connor McDavid, chasing Wayne Gretzky's records right now. And you just didn't even think he belonged in a nuanced subclause to the conversation.
What is he at in assists?
He doesn't have Draisaitl with him. What are you talking about? Stop. I mean, and he's a goal scorer. Stop. I'm just stop.
One of the best players on the planet. You can say they have really two of the best players.
Sorry, those were points. He's one goal behind. He's also, let's see. Okay, he's lagging behind. He is 2 assists behind Ovi as well. He's 1 goal. No. He's 2 assists behind Ovi.
I meant like last year.
And Ovi is 1 goal ahead of him. Ovi has one more goal than Connor McDavid so far this season.
Stop looking at me like that.
Alexander Ovechkin has been playing since I was in like 5th grade.
I know. I think he's awesome. I've always appreciated him. Taryn is trying to hit me. If we were in person,
I'm not. I'm head faking you.
No, I will say when I watched, before we get back on track, when I was watching Alex Ovechkin last season and at the Wells Fargo Center, like those are moments where I would pinch myself and tell myself like, hey, you're literally watching greatness here. Like appreciate this. So no, he was
greatness, but apparently not the greatest.
Not the greatest. Not right now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's get back on track because.
But I will say, I was saying, I would love to see the Flyers score 4.5 goals over this road trip. That would be nice, fine, and dandy. But
I don't know if 4.5 goals is going to be enough against the Oilers.
Right. So now I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't mind if their goal scoring took a knock as long as they're in these games where maybe they're holding some of these more offensive minded teams, to lower total of goals. But we'll see. But no, I am happy to see that they are scoring goals the way they are, because I think some people were a little concerned about that. But yeah, that's what I would like to see continue. And I would love to see the overall, I would most want to see the Brassard, Atkinson, Farabee line continue to click. Like it's not, I loved seeing it in a 4-game stretch. If it continues on this road trip, then you have further validation of like, hey, this line and this group could be legit. So if that continues throughout this road trip against these type of teams, I think that would be really exciting for Flyers fans.
I agree.
But we have something right here. Flyers Talk is brought to you by Great Railing. Stop into Great Railing for the highest quality and lowest prices on all your railing, decking, and fencing needs. Taryn Hatcher, something you want to see change, something that needs to change going into this road trip for the Flyers. As we said, it was not all perfect on this homestand. Far from it.
Yeah. I want to see the Sanheim-Ristolainen pair play better. Mm-hmm. I think there's things about Sanheim's game that I think sometimes we kind of write off as like a fluke, whether it's questionable positioning or just like sort of weird plays where we're like, that's fluky and we've seen him play better than that and he'll be better than that. And honestly, you kind of say the same thing about Ristolainen, and we just have a smaller sample size, and his don't get written off as fluky because that horrible plus minus from Buffalo follows him around, if we're being honest. I would like to see, like I said before, I want to see more of that third line. I just think there's a lot of talent on that third line, and I would like to see JVR go on one of those hot streaks, scoring goals or, producing points, because while he has, like I said before, been having like a sneaky, really solid start to the season, he's capable of being an absolute threat on the ice. And I would like to see that come to fruition, because if that's coming to fruition, I think that means Oscar's accumulating points, and Scott Lawton's been doing great work already. So, and I would like to see, I'd like to see Ryan Ellis back. Like that's really the main change. I'd like to see Ryan Ellis back. I'd like to see the Flyers get it to a point where those 3 D pairs are just solid, locked in, building chemistry. There are no issues. They just get each other. And I think we saw that with Ellis and Provorov when Ellis was healthy. I think we will see it with Sanheim and Ristolainen. I don't think that they have that familiarity back just yet from the injury, to be totally honest. And I want to see Yandel contributing offensively and Braun holding it down defensively out of that third pair, because I think that adds such a different dynamic to the offense for the Flyers. So you just need health for that one to come back. And then, I that first line has stepped up and done what you want first line players to do, I guess, outside of the first game of the season. And then, Giroux scores a goal on the power play last game. I get it's not a top line play technically, but they're all in the power play, so it's kind of not that far off. And that second line has been so productive. I think this could be an incredibly deep, scary team. But in order for that to be the case, having JVR and Oscar Lindblom, JVR's skill, Oscar Lindblom's hockey sense, and Scott Lawton's kind of versatility on your third line brings so much to the team once they get that point production really, really rolling, which for me is associated with getting JVR really, really rolling. So that might be a little unfair to them to say already that they haven't done enough, because I think they look pretty solid, but they're really the only line that I feel like I constantly see Nate Thompson on the ice. Like I'm constantly like number 44 is on the ice, and I don't notice the third line as much just yet. And they've got so much talent. So I just want to see them play as talented as they are, in a way that translates to points, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. Those are two guys I would really love to see get in the goal column and really show the Flyers that depth.
Do you also feel like, I know I look at Nate Thompson's time on the ice and it's like fourth liner minutes, but I feel like he spends so much time on the ice. Every time I look down, he's playing. And I'm like, what is going on?
I know, because I feel like he's out there for obviously a lot of face-offs in the defensive zone. So I feel like he starts a lot of shifts, and I think naturally that makes us think like, well, there's Nate Thompson again. But no, and that's one thing I wouldn't mind to see more of is when Patrick Brown is ready. I want to see Patrick Brown play. And I wouldn't mind seeing one of those fourth liners come out, because Taryn, I don't know about you, but they definitely frustrated me with the penalties against the Panthers. 2 came from Nate Thompson, 1 came from Nicholas Aube-Kubel. So almost half of the penalties the Flyers committed were
Nick
from
Seeler had.
That was and that's kind of what too. Like I think there could be a major confidence boost for defensemen in these games, because these teams really challenge their defensemen. The Panthers really challenge the back end, and so will the Oilers. They put pressure on the D. And so for a guy like Travis Sanheim, who might be fighting himself a little bit right now, I think this could be really good for him. And I would love to see him have just a confidence boosting game where he plays well against some of these top tier talented guys. Because Seeler felt the pressure, so does Sanheim of those Panthers.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I think it's okay. Not that it's okay, because you need guys to be ready to play whenever the call comes. But I can live with Nick Seeler coming up and not looking like Ryan Ellis against the Florida Panthers, who are very good. I do have a harder time with, we've all seen how well Travis Sanheim can play, how well he can skate, how good he can be. And sometimes I wonder what the step is between him playing at max capacity Sanheim. You know what I mean? Sure. And I don't think it's even playing against good players. I think we've shown that he can play very well against good players. I think it's like you said, it's this fighting yourself kind of thing. And I just wonder why do you know what I mean when it comes to that situation? And I don't think we saw it with Myers. We saw it when he was paired with different people. So I don't think that it's that there's a variable there that's impacting it. I do think it's more of a Sanheim thing. Do you get what I'm saying?
No, I do. And I think like when defensemen are confident, they don't question themselves. They just play instinctually. They just go and they go make plays. Whereas Sanheim, I think maybe he's just overthinking his decisions because he's not totally confident. But it's early. It's 4 games in. He's only played with the partner for 2. So I still think Travis Sanheim's a good player. But, you know, if he comes out and plays really well against some of these Edmonton forwards, I think that would do wonders for his confidence. So that's one thing.
The Sanheim criticism comes from the fact that he is unquestionably a good player. Like that's the unfair part of it all. I think it's the same on a different level, but it's like this. It's similar when Provorov doesn't play well.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not even that he doesn't play well; it's that he's a really good player, and you're grading him on his own curve. And you know,
no,
here comes my obese cat walking in. Sorry, keep going.
Cool. So no, I would love to see Patrick Patrick Brown because I think he can bring something. I think he's a decent player. I heard he has north-south qualities. Everything I've heard about his game I like, and I think could fit well in the fourth line. And yeah, maybe the fourth line's been a little too noticeable for the bad reasons. Like the Nicolas Aube-Kubel penalty. Like I really like Nicolas Aube-Kubel, but the one where he kind of sticks his knee out and like and he was fined for it. He was fined for kneeing. It was a third period penalty for tripping. It's avoidable, and it's real far away from the Flyers net. So like those things can kill you. And Nate Thompson, like he got called for roughing in the third period in that game. And again, like these are things that are ill-advised. I don't want to see that from the fourth line. They shouldn't be as noticeable. So
especially because that was the thing with Nick Aube-Kubel that you wanted to see addressed more than anything is like the signature move of taking penalties far from your net.
Yeah.
For seemingly unknown reasons. Like in sometimes game-changing situations.
Yeah.
Not great.
And if one of those guys, and again, we don't know who will sit. Patrick Brown will play on this road trip. We're not sure which game or when he will finally enter the lineup, but he will play. And that would mean Zach McEwen, Nate Thompson, or Nicolas Aube-Kubel will come out. And maybe those guys sitting for a little bit can be a good thing in terms of them realizing like, hey, I need to be smarter when I play. And if I'm not, I come out.
Yeah. So Patrick Brown, it seems like the very earliest he'll play. For those of you who don't know, the very earliest seems like Thursday because he has to fly out separate. The team flew out yesterday. He has to fly out on Wednesday. It's not an NHL COVID thing. It is the country of Canada's COVID situation from, I think it's 14 days since you showed symptoms or something like we went over it yesterday, but it's very confusing between what the NHL's rules are, Canada's rules and whatever. So he can't fly out until Wednesday and he has to fly into Toronto and then fly over to Edmonton because there's no direct flights in the US to Edmonton right now because of, all the travel restraints and shortages of planes and crews and pilots and everything in between. So I don't know what you took from that, Jordan, but I think if he's flying to Toronto and then to Edmonton on Wednesday, he's not playing in Edmonton on Wednesday. I think the earliest we would see him is in Vancouver on Thursday. And
Taryn, I'll say this: we're hitting on what we want to see more of. I think it's a good thing that we're talking about the fourth line. It's not like the Flyers are really lacking from their big boys. They've gotten good contributions from some of the bigger names. So it's good that, the thing that we're nitpicking is guys that are playing 10 minutes a night.
Yeah. And let's be realistic. Like I think a lot of people got a little doomed and gloomy when Kevin Hayes was out and they were like, you're going to take Derek Brassard, who no one really knew where he was going to fit into this lineup. I think most people assumed like a third line center, maybe, trying to figure out where he goes, where Scott Lawton goes, if he goes there and all of that. So Derek Brassard now being your second line center, filling in for Kevin Hayes on the team's most threatening, consistently productive line. And he looks good in the position and he looks incredibly comfortable with both Cam Atkinson and Joel Farabee. And when you want to talk about where you've taken, well, I guess you didn't really take a hit on money when it came to Cam, you actually laid off some money. But when you talk about the guys you wanted to see come out and have a big year right away, I think the top of our mind is TK, Cam Atkinson, given, bringing him in, Joel Farabee, given the contract. And then I would argue beyond that, like probably defensively, Ristolainen and Carter. And with the exception of Rasmus, I think all of them you would go, I give you a passing grade so far and everything you've done. You've answered all of the bells. And I think with Rasmus, there has to be a bit of a caveat because I don't think people realized, I still don't even know what his injury is. Like I wouldn't be able to share if I knew, but no one would tell me, which makes me think that maybe it was like affecting him a little bit more than, and I don't know that, again, total speculation. But he was like skating with Kevin Hayes certain days. So I think there's a certain amount of injury leeway that some of us are giving him for the first few games. But if he can show up pretty early as well, then you basically hit on all of your big ticket items so far. So like you said, it's talking about a fourth line being your problem is not a problem really, to be honest.
Yeah, fourth line and penalties. And so penalties are obviously unforced errors, things you can prevent. So that's good.
Just dumb penalties too. Dumb. Yeah. So dumb. I was so we were sitting in the newsroom and I was just like,
yeah, they're not good.
And if you're listening on the podcast and you're not watching on YouTube, 1, subscribe to our YouTube. And 2, I was making very disappointing faces. So
she was. And the Flyers right now entering Tuesday, they have the second most penalty minutes per game. I do think some of that is skewed from that crazy Kraken game where obviously penalty minutes were all over the place. But nonetheless, they do have the second most penalty minutes per game. The Edmonton Oilers lead the league in power play percentage. Again, just limit penalties. Give yourself a chance at even strength.
They met their quota for the month of October. So just stop. Just leave it be. I'll take all the Kraken penalties. They don't bother me. I think they added to the motivation of the night. I will take all of those. I will take 0 of the Florida penalties. None.
Yes.
Not acceptable.
Spot on, Taryn. The Kraken game, I think they had purpose. Everyone would agree with that. The Panthers game, no. And Rasmus Ristolainen does celebrate his 27th birthday, I believe. 27th birthday on Wednesday. And his present is facing Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
What a gift.
Yeah, what a gift. But I would love to see more from Rasmus Ristolainen and Travis Sanheim. I think we can both agree on that, and we'll see if it happens. But homestand in the books, road trip underway here, and we will continue to have it all covered here on the Flyers Talk podcast. Taryn Hatcher, thank you so much. As always, great seeing you, great chatting with you. A big thank you to Ben Berry, our podcast producer and guru. And Flyers fans, as always, thank you for listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. Wherever you get your podcast, please rate and listen, and we cannot wait to talk to you next time.